Hi there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to yet another cracking installment of the Map Round Show. We are doing the Built in California series, and with me on the line from California, of all places, right, is none other than Kevin Jones, the founder and CEO of Blue Wire Pods. Welcome to the show.
Matt, thanks for having me. Looking forward to the conversation today.
Cool, bud. So listen, I've been doing a lot of research on what you guys have been doing. I'm so pumped to see you'll learn more really around what you guys are doing in terms of the future of sports podcasting. So, but for our viewers around the world who potentially don't know who the hell you are, why don't you give us the elevator pitch? Kick us off. What do we need to know?
Definitely. I founded Blue Wire in August of 2018, and taking a step back, podcasting right now to me is for two groups of people. The first group is Joe Rogan's, the Obamas, the most famous podcasters in the world. The second group is your uncle Tony, who has a podcast on kayaking. Amateurs, anyone can start a podcast. Blue Wire, I'm trying to create a third group of podcasters. It is the middle class group of podcasters who have between 25,000 downloads a month and a million downloads a month, and working with those folks who are severely under monetized but have really good content. So we have 275 different shows. Most of those are sports, but we do have entrepreneurship content, relationship advice, Dungeons and Dragons, chess. We are for niche podcasters. They bring their audience to us. We have 12 million monthly listeners. By a couple different standards, we're about the 20th biggest podcast network worldwide. And yes, I founded the company 4 years ago, looking forward to continuing growing it, getting more into our story, more into everything we do to help support the podcast industry.
Fantastic. So, Kevin, where did the genesis of this startup come about? What's the origin story? Where you're a consumer podcast, you're like, yo, this sucks for me. I'm sure it sucks for a lot of other people. Walk us through what was the spark here.
I was the podcast creator who we cater our business towards. I had a 49ers podcast. It was getting 5,000 downloads an episode, which is um, not huge, but definitely not at the small end. It was somewhere in the middle, but no one could really help me monetize my podcast by itself. I needed to find other podcasts my size and band together. That was my aha moment. So I was this 49ers podcaster. I'd worked in sports media for 10 years before this, radio in San Francisco, worked for the Cleveland Browns, did this whole journey of trying to make it in radio and television, and basically saw the success of Ringer and Barstool. Cadence 13 was a new podcast company. And I thought, hey, there can be more of these. There's so many radio companies, so many television companies. There's not enough podcasting publishers. That was in 2018. And that was the origin story. My 49ers podcast wasn't making enough money. I thought it was more valuable, and it spurred me to start a company.
So, how have you seen? I mean, obviously, I've been around for 7 years building a podcast audience, and it's a slog. I think in if you look on iTunes, there's like a graveyard of could have been shows, and I'm curious to get your views. How have you seen the industry mature over the last 4 years or so? In which direction is it heading?
The advertising has matured most, first and foremost. The There's substantial dollars flowing to podcasters in a great way for the industry. Indeed is one of those who we work with. One of their rivals, ZipRecruiter, has been in podcasting for a long time. So you think you're seeing the advertisers respond to competitors. They want to be in the space. That's first and foremost how I've seen it change most. Second is celebrity involvement. It used to be an independent place, but now we have a couple celebrity podcasters, Chris Long, Richard Jefferson, these former athletes. These aren't Tom Brady or Cristiano Ronaldo, but people are turning their celebrity into becoming podcasters. Instead of writing a book, instead of appearing regularly on the radio, they're now just saying, I'm just going to own and operate my own podcast. I have the time to do that. 2018, there was a little bit of that, but not much. And now almost everyone wants to do that, almost a little too much. There's a lot of not good ones out there, but I do think there's some great shows rising out. I'd say third and final, there's a lot of good startups in the space. There's a lot of emerging companies, not just Blue Wire. There's technology like Pod Sites, our friends over there who Spotify bought. There's there's so many little ones who are just seed stage, honestly, too, that not many have heard of yet that are coming to podcasting, whether that's technology, editing, transcription. There's more change coming to audio in a better way. Spotify and Apple have been great. They've People now control their own playlist like they never have before. And I think listeners are leaning in. Technology, the investments there, the advertisers are there, the content's there. So a lot of goodness is happening.
So, Kevin, tell us a bit more about Blue Wire Pods. Like, this is obviously predominantly a sports orientated media play. Um, why sports? Why do you think sports resonates so well with this medium?
First, it's my background. I was a journalist and I understand it. I grew up listening to radio. I think audio and sports go really well together. People want to listen before the game, they want to listen after the game, they want to hear experts talk about sports. They don't want to just watch the players. They want to have a conversation about sports, and audio helps facilitate that happening. I believe in the sports calendar. There's the World Cup, there's the Super Bowl, there's the Masters, there's a lot of big events each year. Other categories, you have to kind of invent the conversation. Politics, every 4 years you have the election, you have different things, but I like the sports calendar. And I also just saw it right now is very top heavy. The successful people in sports are ultra big whales: Colin Cowherd, Bill Simmons, Dan Lebitard. I have a tapas menu, middle class, bottoms up approach, trying to say there's not one creator that actually dominates sports talk. It's a bunch of micro communities. That's what makes sports the best. It's not Bill Simmons talking about all the sports. A better sports talk vision of the future is credible experts talking soccer, credible experts talking Oakland A's. And I think that doesn't exist right now in sports audio. I saw that as the opportunity is to aggregate smaller conversations. Think of it, the big heads are like the oceans or the Great Lakes. My small podcasts are like the ponds or the lake house you go to. It's more intimate. It is for less people. You go to the beach, everyone's there. But I'm collecting a bunch of these lake houses and ponds where people hang out and fish. I still think people love that. People love going to smaller things, and we have to collect a lot more of them. It makes our job hard, but the content's very valuable.
Hmm. I'm curious to get your view, Kevin, on what makes a successful podcast, because I often get emails from people going, "Hey, man, what do you think? Should I start a podcast?" And I'm like, "Yeah, man, sure, like go for it." But recognize it's like going to be at least a year of pain, probably a lot longer if you if you fall in love with the medium, like I suppose you and I have. But looking back, over 4 years, you've got access to a perspective I don't have. I'm like Matt Brown show, and that's it, and maybe Joe Rogan, a few other shows. But you're looking at like 12 million monthly downloads across multiple podcasts. So, what is or what makes a great podcast today?
First is the mindset. The podcaster doesn't think of themselves as an amateur podcaster. They think of their podcast as a business. So they think of themselves as an entrepreneur. When you make that mindset shift and you look at your podcast as a business and a business opportunity, what makes a good podcast is consistency of episodes, releasing on a similar cadence, not missing. So your audience then, we find, unsubscribes. You need to build a cadence. You need to be big on a couple other platforms. You can't be big on every single one, at least one. Is that Twitter? Is that LinkedIn? Is that YouTube? Is that TikTok? We don't see any successful podcaster not build at least on one other platform. So you think of the podcast as your show. How are you creating other content from it? Is that YouTube Shorts? We really think of podcast can be a key. What am I saying here? Podcast can be the driver in your golf bag. Um, Other social media platforms have to play with the podcast, or if you want to do it for fun, that's fine. If but don't expect any money at all. If you're doing it for your business to get clients, that's also fine. Just have realistic expectations. But the people we work with at Blue Wire, we want them to treat their podcast as a business unit. You are owning and operating a content channel. We are licensing your owned and operated content channel to sell ads because we think it's valuable. When we shift people's mindset to that, they want to record more. They want to do more. They want to partner with these advertisers. That's what we look for. People who treat their content as a long-term investment, and they're consistent and they're ready for opportunities.
Kevin, I'm always curious about this question. I'm sure you've got this tons. I know I have. It's like, when do you monetize? It's like, well, do you need 1,000 downloads? Is it 5,000 downloads? Is it 1,000,000? Like, when does a producer or a creator, whether they're viewing a channel as a business or not, look to start monetizing? Is that something one should consider from day one or from day 365 or beyond?
From day one, there's a tool called AdvertiseCast. I'll give those guys a plug. You can kind of project your downloads there and they'll give you something. At Blue Wire, we need a bare minimum of 25,000 downloads per month. I don't care how you get there. If you're recording daily, if you're recording one episode a week and get there, but that is the bare minimum for us to take to advertisers to show that there's an audience here. Advertisers want to see some sort of audience. They don't want to go too micro in our dealings with them. But there are programmatic solutions out there. But that's why I started Blue Wire, man, is I was uploading to Libsyn, I was uploading to Podbean, I was trying different places. Oh, what's going to get me the best deal? Those are all bad deals. You need a direct sales force if you're going to make money in podcasting. Blue Wire is an example of that. SiriusXM has a direct sales force. iHeart, we're on the smaller end of that. We want to work with smaller creators and be their direct sales force. And I'm amazed to say this. I'm not going to reveal what podcast it is, but there's a podcast on our platform. They're not a celebrity at all. They don't have a huge following on social. They post a lot of content on social, but not a huge following. They make $70,000 a month on Blue Wire's platform with their ads. They're making $700,000 a year. They started their podcast 5 to 7 years ago and just kept going. They have a couple other podcasts under the umbrella now too, but we see a range from people making up to 70,000 monthly with us to as low as a few $100s, which is still better than zero for some people. And we're encouraging people. We want to on-ramp more and more people to give them the financial freedom to quit their day job. If your podcast is that successful with us, that's not everyone can get there. It can't be the full mission, but for certain people, we're like, hey, if you execute this, let's set a target number. Let's go out there together and try and get you full time.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a number someone was sharing with me as a CEO of a biopharma company. He's doing some awesome stuff in arrhythmia technology. Anyway, so I got chatting to him, and he was like, "Matt, do you know what you have to earn to make to be in the top 1% of earners in the US?" I'm like, "No." He goes, $440,000. So that podcast crew, that's they're in the top 1% of the top 1% of earners through a podcast channel. That's amazing.
I see that as a future 2025, 2030, 2035. The number one job for a 15-year-old, a couple of different surveys now, is YouTuber / podcaster. This is becoming the dream job for a lot of people. And some YouTubers are obviously chefs and flying kites, but a lot of them are going to be chit chat talk host. You see less and less in sports of those shows launching as TV shows. Those shows are launching as podcasts. So I think they're going to be, the pie is getting bigger and bigger for independent content creators entering this world, making good content and being like, what's next? So the opportunity is getting larger and larger as we go on, as jobs start to get more automated, as you're talking 10, 20 years from now, but the US changing their economy to have some kind of stipend for folks as wealthy economy, wealth inequality, is out of whack. Content creation is going to be a full-time job for a lot of people is my prediction. What you have going on, Matt, this is niche. People want to listen to entrepreneurs in California, what they're building. This stuff's valuable. Advertisers, the dollars are changing there enough for content creators to get paid.
Yeah.
Is our bet.
Yeah, it's I think I can't actually put into words like the ROI of the Map Round show, like for me. Like a genuinely, dude. It's like it's next level ROI. Like people like they seem to misunderstand that, or they think that the ROI of a podcast is like, when you get paid to place an ad on your show because you've hit certain thresholds in terms of downloads. Like, dude, I can't tell you, man. Like, I've sold out events. I got my person of extraordinary ability green card through the show. Like, put an ROI on that. Um, I have a global network. I'm able to get into any business. Like, I don't care who it is. I have a story that they're like, yeah, I want to chat to Matt. Um, Podcasting, prospecting, just the built-in California stuff. Like, I mean, you hear by virtue of an email that said, "Hey, man, come have a chat." Like, I sent 1,600 emails to funded startups in California, going, "Hey, man, I'm doing a series called Built in California. Would you like to come on the show and give get some free PR?" Well, geez, dude, like the response, like diary flooded, crazy. So like people if you look at what the medium is, it's not just about content and ads, and that kind of it is, but there's more to it. It's like the more you podcast, the richer you get. Like the more networks you have, and then the more networks you're able to tap into, and then like I sell interviews to founders, and to startups and to C-suite executives and to PR firms because they battle to get their story across. They want to have this conversation about what makes them different, like how do their products work and all this kind of stuff. Like I've made millions just doing that. So it's on activating the content, and I haven't made a cent selling ads on my channel because I hate ads. like I like genuinely hate them.
Oh yeah. So no, it's great, man. I think podcast ads are the future right now. Television ads and radio ads are just a tough delivery mechanism, but ad formats are constantly changing. And yeah, the cool thing about podcasting is you are able to make a lot of dollars off this. No one knows how many people are listening to this. It's not like YouTube, where you wouldn't be able to do that. There's some mystique here about having a podcast. No, the people who are appearing on it don't know how many people are actually listening, and I do think there are high quality people. Like not all downloads are created equal, is what I say. Sometimes the CEO of X company could be listening to this podcast, right, and want to reach out to me afterwards. So the ecosystem just helps itself really by people appearing as guests, people figure out other ways to monetize it. Um, I'm of course a big proponent of ads, but you don't have to monetize your podcast through ads. I think that's the beauty of it.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, I would much rather have like a sponsored segment. So, funnily enough, I spoke to advertising Acast, I think you say. I spoke to one of their account execs literally before this call, and I was curious to understand like what are they doing around, you know, innovative ways to essentially, because like if it's not ads, like what other ways are there? And also, I was very surprised to see how big that company is. Like it's huge.
Yes, they downloads is the currency in podcasting. So I have 12 million monthly downloads, likely going to have between 140 and 150 million downloads this year. Acast has in the billions of downloads, I want to say. They have more podcasts uploading there. They have they have the tech and amateur podcasters. Like I said, there's Joe Rogan, who's the big whale, then there's amateurs, who's the other bucket. There's a lot of companies making a lot of money on the amateur bucket. Just think there's 2 million podcasts. Same way YouTube makes money on those small channels too. There's still ads on those small podcasts. Those ads are like very cheaply bought, but all those tiny podcasts aggregated together, similar business model to mine. I'm just aggregating bigger ones, but they have all the small ones. So Acast, very legit company, lives in Podbean, Megaphone got bought by Spotify. Anywhere you can upload your podcast, these companies are doing really well. As more and more people create new podcasts, the advertising dollars are more. They can offer bigger pie to the advertisers, and there's more advertisers fighting for the space here. So the dollars increase. It's a good supply and demand dynamic right now in podcasting.
Mm. So I'm curious to maybe double click on what you said. Like you need to have a direct sales force. Um, what does this look like? So if you're a creator, like myself, use myself for instance, where does the direct sales force come into helping you commercialize or monetize your show?
Yes, I have, when I say direct Salesforce, not to be confused with salesforce.com, just for the listeners, but I have 3 sellers out there who work full time for Blue Wire. They get a commission. They talk to different advertisers. We know Indeed.com likes business content. We make a deck, a one sheet with all of our business shows. Out of our 275 shows, we have 15 business shows. They get X amount of downloads. So a direct sales force, we're able to chop up the content, approach advertisers. We learn what they like. Taco Bell likes NBA basketball content. We have 40 NBA podcasts that get 2 million monthly downloads out of our 12 million. So we can, the advantage of Blue Wire, and everyone does this to a degree, SiriusXM on a bigger scale, they have Conan O'Brien, they have Howard Stern. That's their comedy. And they have a direct sales force packaging that. They know Tostitos Chips loves comedy, just using all these as examples. So a direct sales force is able to, instead of the programmatic ads where you can get on Acast or others for any podcast, we're packaging sports content at my company and business, some others, to advertisers for direct buys. And then our podcasters read those ads on our show. We're uploading a megaphone. They get all the data. We send that back to the Indeed, and they can tell how many people listened in what city. So then they can go to their CMO. Here was our, okay, we spent out of our marketing budget 20% on podcasting. Some of that spend was with Blue Wire. Here was, we reached these types of people. So we're helping those marketing companies achieve their goals by doing all this.
So do you feel like where's the monetization tracking or journey falling over? Because like I was speaking to this accounts exec as I touched on earlier, and I said to her, so explain to me how you're tracking the actual conversion piece, because like you can track the downloads, you can track I suppose a lot of the metrics around consumption, or if an ad was played through like to its to the end, it wasn't 3 seconds in and then you get charged for the ad. And then but I always get asked this question like, yeah, but what's the ROI? And I'm like, well, and you can explain, but where I feel like a lot of marketing executives kind of fall short, not in all cases, like there's some mature marketers out there who are experts, but when it comes to the conversion piece, like if you think about like Joe Rogan will be like, well, go to salesforce.com/Joe. Like, is that the conversion piece that really matters to an advertiser?
Yeah, a couple different things here. So there is indeed.com/Blue Wire, and we do get measured off of that. This is our 3rd year working with them. They don't share the results there, but they tell us if it's not performing well enough. But they also tell us if it's performing great. There's a lot of trust that we have there. We work with Chevy trucks. There's no Chevy.com/Blue Wire. There's a lot more sponsorship buys coming into podcasting. They're not looking for direct response. They're just trying to be cool. They're recognizing Blue Wire is getting big. It's cool to be with this kind of content. If people listen to this, hey, we don't know. There's going to be some inherent effect. They're going to be counted as our podcasting buy. We're not measuring this, but it was brand awareness is coming to podcasting. It's here. I'd say about half of our revenue is brand awareness and half direct response. When I started, it was 100% direct response. There's a lot more brand awareness dollars coming in the space, which is great. I don't know how many clicks makes it a good campaign for Indeed. I don't know if that's 400. I don't know if that's 4 signups. They don't share that info with me, but whatever is happening is working. We switch up our ads. Sometimes we put them in the beginning. Sometimes we put them 4 minutes into the podcast. It's on us to make sure we're reaching. We don't want the ads to ever get stale. So we record new copy all the time, new music, new voices, which seems to combat. There's new signups all the time. We're reaching, we put it in different shows. So yes, but no, sometimes we perform poorly. We've definitely had a campaign canceled before. Hey, we didn't see anything from this. We our minimum buy is a $25,000 ad buy with us. So if we do that poorly, then we do a make good for them or do something. But that's happened less than 5 times in 4 years. It happens maybe once a year. We're generally delivering results, whether that's clicks, purchases, some of both. There are cookie pixels now in podcast too.
Oh,
You can
really?
track someone if they come later or come through. Hey, they listen to it. There's a cookie now. They Google it later. They give us attribution for that.
Hmm.
There's
Interesting.
cookies in podcasting. We use Pod Sites, Chartable. There's different companies you can use. There's a couple different ones. The tech, I can't say enough. I mean, podcasting has gotten better for advertisers.
Yeah. So on the awareness side of things, how do you how does one monetize that? Because at least from what I'm when I speak to a founder, entrepreneur, or even an advertiser or a PR firm, um, and in general, with the way the market is right now in the US, like this hyperinflation, consumers, like that whole thing, the macroeconomic downturn, so to speak, there's a lot of emphasis on businesses to get a return on investment. So if you do direct response, cool, man, I got 50 leads, great. So I converted 10 of those. So 5 times $100 makes me, I made $500, spent 100. My ROI is 5 to 1. Um, in the awareness side of things, though, for me, I can't reconcile that. So what have you learned about the reach, frequency, awareness, ROI type thing? How does one establish a value on that?
Yes, we guarantee a number of impressions. Chevy, they come in for football season. It's September through December. We're going to guarantee them that X amount of people are going to listen to the ad. We have the metric to track that at Megaphone. That is brand awareness for them. That the fact that someone listened to that ad within a podcast, that is the ROI for them. At the end of the year, they can be like X amount of people listen to our podcast commercials through Blue Wire, through Barstool, through other different things that they spent on. They're just trying to make sure that, and that we give them that data. They have full access to that. Here's your spend. I think we're averaging 74% of our listeners listen to the commercial, which is surprisingly high, given the skip button too. So, and that's different. That's just an average with all of our shows, all of our campaigns. Some can be less, some can be more, but that's a general good rule of thumb. Three of four people listen to the ad, and we can basically promise that, hey, Chevy, here's the deal. And if we were under that, we'll give them more in January or February. If it's December and we came up short, we generally like to be done early. We crush it. We're done in November. That makes them, here, you're going to get free stuff in December. Do you want to renew your campaign? We like to over or under promise, over deliver.
Yeah, I get that. I get that. So, Kevin, obviously everyone knows about Joe Rogan and Spotify's deal. So he's got, whatever, he got like 100 million for it, and a new studio. Plus that, no one's talking about the new studio. But have you seen, like, are you talking about like these acquisitions? Like it seems to me like there's companies and technology that's being acquired by companies to create competitive advantages and things like that. So over and above, Joe, I'm curious, outside of the business acquisition story, have you come across or maybe you could paint a picture of how liquid is the channel acquisition space? Meaning it's not like hey man, come to Blue Wire Pods and we will give you, a share of the revenue. You know what I mean? Like that's a different type. I'm talking about pure play. We want your channel and we're going to pay you 100 million, 10 million, a million, 500,000 to own your channel?
No, it's a great question. I don't think the space is there yet, and why Blue Wire is a very smart decision for creators today. I do see that as the future. Um, we've seen a few one-off. We've seen the Cleveland Cavaliers purchase the podcast. We don't own our content, so our creators are free to leave. Actually, I think they negotiated keeping that feed, but we've seen one of our Iowa podcasters leave for Iowa local radio. I think everyone starts a podcast to make it rich, right? That's why I said at the beginning of this, not Joe Rogan, but they're whatever. Like some people start the podcast, they have something to say, but there's a chance that this could go well. You're not seeing that on the individual level unless you're at 1 million downloads per episode is a pretty good threshold there. I think Joe Rogan's at 2 or 3 or 4 million per episode. I forgot the latest. Alex Cooper, Spotify, they bought her for 60 million. Individuals, they have to be Conan O'Brien. They have to be doing this a long, long time for acquisition from Spotify's of the world. Where I think you're a good data point here for your case is HubSpot acquired The Hustle, which is a business podcast and network. It included a website and a lot of other things, but the podcast is pretty big too. HubSpot's a marketing platform. If you start to have these kind of companies make more of those acquisitions, I see that as the future, man. I really do. Where having a content creator on the staff or owning that content is like marketing. Hey, what's our marketing spend this year? What content acquisition are we going to go make? I see that 10 years from now. I see myself helping bring that to the world. You may have just helped me start my next business, man, but
you're welcome.
More companies should be owning content channels. Screw starting them from scratch. There's so much good content out there. How do you pair?
Yeah, it's. I'm just looking at the release that we're.
Excuse me. Sorry.
No, it's all good. I'm just listening to. Well, what are we listening? Reading the release where HubSpot acquired The Hustle. It's interesting that I think the thing that really resonates with me from what you were saying earlier, Kevin, is this idea of like micro communities. Like if I'm brutally honest, I hate social media. I hate LinkedIn. I hate Facebook. I don't like any of it. The reason why I don't like any of it is because of the economics around these platforms. Like I'm a content creator, I'm an entrepreneur, and it's pay to play. Like, everyone's missed that boat like 15 years ago. And so now, a podcast from my experience is you must own your shit. Like that's it. You must own it. You must own your own channels. And if you can build an audience around your own channels, and then you use Facebook as like a distribution channel as an example, or LinkedIn, it's just purely like a check it out here. But it means fuck all to me if I have 25,000 subscribers or if I have like 250. It doesn't matter like the metrics on the distribution channels. It matters like the engagement that I have in my audience and like what I'm able to create for brands in terms of access to decision makers or access to connections or micro communities that I have a direct relationship with, hence The Hustle versus and HubSpot. So for instance, if The Hustle was a Facebook page, you would never get acquired, irrespective of like how much, you understand what I'm trying to say? So it's like
it's about this content universe that you can create, but to counter your point, you're still going to have numbers to back everything up on an acquisition. It can't be like this decision maker here I'm close with, like that has zero value. In having now someone has tried to acquire Blue Wire before, it did not work out. I'm happy to report that it would have been a bad deal for us. So I've sat here before. The way someone buys your business or buys your content channel, it is a number spreadsheet game. I know everyone in content that it has zero value to the deal, but that's a consulting business, right? You wouldn't be, that's a services business versus a content. The company's almost buying a product when they buy the content a little bit. You have to still perform the service of the content, but a couple different ways of looking at that. Your consulting, that could come in powerful and handy, but that's generally not a skill people acquire, but they can, not combined with the content. I haven't really seen that.
Have you given much thought to? I'm curious to understand like the acquisition side of things and valuation. So, I know you guys have raised quite a bit of cash to date. How much have you raised?
We've raised 11.4 million. Founded the company bootstrapped August of 2018 with 17,000 of my own money. So we didn't start with a big check, but 500 startups was the first check in May of 2019. And our biggest round was a combined Series A last year, 7.5 million from Dot Capital and Wynn Resorts, the Las Vegas hotel. Those came in two different $3.5 and $4 million headlines, but raised 7.5 million last year. So that was the big majority of the fundraise.
And what is the perspective that you feel investors or VCs have in this space particularly? Are they bullish on it? Because it's not exactly the world's like most liquid category.
They are not bullish. I've gotten over 200 no's this time around, meeting with folks. The economy is in a different spot. This is a tough industry because there's not a lot of proof points. Venture capitalists, first of all, like billion-dollar outcomes, most of them. So that eliminates 85% of the people. I'm focused on media investors who are still venture investors, but to a smaller scale. I'm focused on entrepreneurs. I'm focused on corporate investors. So I'm playing from a smaller investor pool, but there are still investors who believe in podcasting for sure. There's been some good rounds raised this year at Lemonada Media as a women's led network. Trying to think who else on the content side. John Boy is a similar network to us. It's more YouTube focused, but definitely have big podcasts there. There's been good seed investment into podcasting. You haven't seen Series B. You haven't seen Series C. You saw with Podimio, some of the overseas platforms will get that kind of funding. Content, it's hard. Gimlet raised a Series B. They were the last podcast content company to raise a Series B. They got acquired by Spotify. We raised a Series A. We may raise more money. We may not. We may take out debt. There's a lot of things that we can do. Raising money is really hard right now, is all I got to say. Any founder doing it, my heart is with you. It sucks hearing no as much as you get told no. So I don't envy anyone in my spot. I definitely am wearing a hat because I'm balding pretty bad because of this. So
yeah, it's speaking of startups who've raised money in the space. Have you come across mission.org?
I've heard of them, but I have not spoke with them.
So I've just brought it up on screen for everyone, but it's essentially a network of C-level and executive focus shows, experiences, and communities. It's not too dissimilar from what you were talking about, Kevin. And then they've got these different channels and communities. So like marketing trends, data chief, the story, the journey, whatever. And so what's curious about that is that was Chris Lockhead. By the way, you should absolutely read this book. This one here. Everyone should read this book. Where is it? There you go. Called Snow Leopard. It's about how legendary writers create a category of one. It's basically about content and what makes a content work or not. And so he put me onto mission.org, and they're backed by Sokoa Capital. So you and mission.org are like the only two. Currently today anyway, I've only been in the States a couple of months, but you're the only two brands I know that have got money behind them in this space currently.
There's quite a bit. If you search Crunchbase here, I can right now, but
don't worry.
I don't want to brag. There's plenty of people in the space.
How many is
list
it?
them off. Red Circle. Yeah, it's true. We've raised more than most in Audio Boom, they're older than us. Callin is a new one. But raising money from investors, I lived in San Francisco at the time. I'm lucky. If I didn't live there, I don't know if I would have been able to. It really helped open my eyes to venture capital. I also started raising it before all the shit storm happened. It's really hard to start now. Um, I, I had a bunch of capital in before the recession. Who knew it was easier to raise money during a pandemic than a recession? I think most founders would agree with that.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I do think like the cost of capital now is like going to be way higher than it was like a year ago even.
Oh, definitely. Valuations are taking a hit. I think, yeah, if you compare this to Shark Tank, these sharks have the advantage right now.
Mm. So what's your vision here for Blue Wire Pods? Is this something that you want to get to like 120 million or 200 million and then exit? Like what's the vision here?
That would be a dream come true. I'm going to do everything in my power to make that happen. I'm also the person who realizes when the time is right. And, you know, I don't have any absolute. I think that's the cool part and the flexibility of podcasting. I also made zero money before this as a journalist, kind of building all my relationships in sports. So I feel like I've been working for free the last 10 years basically to get to this point. At a certain point, yeah, I want this to be $1 billion company, man. If people will invest in Blue Wire at the valuation I want to, I will go as long as possible. If I do, I'm still burning capital. I've been very clear about that in the press too. I got to turn this business profitable, and I need to figure that out. So
Yeah, I'm very curious, like, how do you value something like this? Because is it purely like based on the usual way where it's like EBIT, and whatever, like revenue growth, industry, things like that? Um,
yes, it is. It is.
it
It's
is.
it's
Okay.
it's a 3 to 5 to. It was a 10x multiple for Wondery and Amazon. Wondery has some great IP. The 10x days are over on acquisition revenue multiples in media. 3 to 5 is outstanding. 4 or 5 is outstanding for the founder. It's a revenue multiple. Podcasting still is a hot space to me, but all spaces have cooled as having cash is a key thing right now. But there's some smart businesses that are making smart acquisitions. Um, I'm open, man. I'm open. I would love to keep running Blue Wire. Is my first choice though.
Hmm. So, if you could get into a time machine, Kevin, and go back to your early days of podcasting, what advice would you give yourself, or even just a entrepreneurs like, hey man, I want to get into this whole space? What's your advice to them day one?
Oh, the day one advice
Yeah.
is know your strengths and know your weaknesses very, very clearly. Don't pretend like something's a strength that's not. Finances were my weakness. Legal was my weakness in the beginning. I knew I was going to have both of those to make a business. My partner, Armani Kadami, those are some of his strengths. So I knew I couldn't do it all alone. Day one is to, what am I good at? Getting people excited about this, aka sales, content, uh, production. I was editing podcasts at the beginning. Then I did have a big vision. You have to be overconfident. You have to bring two things together that aren't something yet, whether that's the creator and the advertiser or the investor and the fundraising round. As an entrepreneur and in my space, you're constantly the person in the middle trying to bring two things together. You have to be comfortable parallel pathing a lot. If something doesn't work out, then you have a lot of backup options all the time.
Mm.
That's not a bad thing. You have to really have a mindset shift change of, I have to create so many options for myself, but also have a very clear plan of what I'm sticking to. It's tough. I have 30 employees. We've kept most of the good ones. Some great ones have left. We've hired some people that didn't work out. So, I mean, that's key. If you stink at hiring, it's going nowhere once
Mm.
you get the venture capital. If I could go, I think the first part of the question, if I could go back, change things. I still don't allocate capital as great as I want to, but in reading books, that's every entrepreneur's biggest weakness is, okay, you have $10 million. You should be getting better and better over time, how to maximize that. At the beginning, you bet on things that are a little irrational, or you think you can take on the world, or, if I could go back, I would probably save myself a couple millions on those decisions. Hindsight's 2020, but they're all over the place. There's some content, some employees, some, it's a mix and match. But if I could go back, you sling cash, you're moving so quickly in this environment. You kind of want to slow down a little bit, and I wish I did. But
sometimes you don't have the space to slow down. I mean, my wife's always at me. I don't know if you got wife and children and that kind of thing.
Double-edged sword. If I slowed down, will we even be here? If I was agonizing over more decisions over cash,
there you go.
I don't think so. I think we'd be not growing as fast. This mindset has cost us cash, but we would take this trade with where we're at now, with where the company is.
Yeah, it's I think with scale, it's like only the paranoid survive. It's like I was chatting to a founder. His name is what's his name? I was chatting to him just before you, Kev. Give me a sec here. You said something. Billy Brush, dude. This startup is 100% going to be a unicorn, major back, like heavily financed, but like the stuff they're doing is amazing. And I was chatting to him, and he's got 5 kids, dude. 5 kids, right? So he's doing all of this with 5 children.
Wow.
he's like the closest thing to Elon Musk I know. Like land kids, heavy pressure.
I'm not going to hit $1 billion exit this time. I'd like to go for that my second time around, but who knows? That's way, way, way into the future.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have admiration for folks. It takes the right idea. Media was my background. Sports, inherently, there's Bleacher Report's one of the biggest exits there. Ringer, that's 200, 250. If we got there, it would be the greatest outcome ever of my life. Anything short of that is still great. So, but billion, man, who knows? If I held on to this thing for 15 to 20 years, I could make this $1 billion company. It would not be unicorn overnight, but it could be one of those really long plays.
So Billy was saying to me, he was like, you got to work like someone's going to take it all away from you. And this is the thing, like, and I always think like the more you think about a problem, like the more you see. The more you think about anything, it's like shit starts to expand. And so if you're not obsessing, like I'm not saying like always be 100% working, whatever. But if you're not obsessing about the problem and the business, and it's like someone will come and eat your lunch. And in America, like one of the things that I've learned pretty quickly over here is just how competitive it is. There's like, to find a white space, a space that there's no one in there like doing it, it's so hard. And I said to Billy, like, how important is it to have a white space? And he was like, dude, like if you don't have a white space, you're dead. Like, don't even try. Investors switch off. You like that. And because remember, everyone's trying to commoditize you and go, oh, well, you're a podcast company. It's like, no, dude. I'm a media company.
We're for the middle class because we're the only one. Yeah, you really have to. How are you the only one doing what you're doing? Which, of course, we're not. There's other people doing ad sales for sports and working with creators, but for sure, our pitch decks, our mission, our messaging, to investors is we're one and only, man. This was so great, man. Great questions here. I can tell you're a podcaster, and you probably got a lot out of this. Hopefully,
I did.
I feel like these were good questions for me to get out of my head.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being here, man. Just one more thing, and then we'll wrap up. Why do you do what you do, Kev? What gets you out of bed in the morning?
Oh man, I have to have such a better answer to this. It's half I want to inspire those around me and those who come across my story, because I think I'm an average Joe. I get up and I want to have a good exit for Blue Wire. I want to make great headlines because I think someone else might start a startup or step out. Half of it is for me. I love making headlines. I want to have a legacy. But when I leave this earth, I want there to be a story about what I was able to accomplish. So I wake up half to inspire other people, my content creators, my employees, other people who barely know me yet, but read this, want to do it. And then half I'm selfish, man. And people have to be successful, and they want it. I want it for myself too. And I think that's the real answer.
Amazing. Kevin Jones, thank you for being on the show.
Matt Brown, I love your show. If you need any other guests, let me know. Let's stay in touch.
Yeah, we will. Cheers, buddy. Take it easy.
Bye.